Coaches, are you ready to revolutionize your game preparation? For the past 5 seasons, coaches across the nation have been using the ultimate scout team game changer, the Coachpad. Imagine this: no more scrambling on weekends to prep scout cards, no more fumbling with paper and binders. Whether you're drawing your cards digitally with a computer program or sketching them by hand, the Coachpad is your all in one solution. Picture yourself on the practice field effortlessly managing your scout team or standing on the sidelines during game day, syncing adjustments from the press box to your coaches on the sideline and back. With the Coach Pad, you can clearly see your scout cards even in the brightest sunlight. No more squinting or dealing with the wind blowing clear vinyl sleeves everywhere. This offseason, take your coaching to the next level. Get your Coach Pad today at thecoachpad.com and gear up for a winning season ahead. Welcome back to another episode of the Gap Down Backer podcast. Make sure you hit like, share, subscribe so that people can find this podcast and others. Today we have a fantastic guest. He's the defensive coordinator at Weatherford High School in the great state of Texas, Coach Robert Rubel. Coach, how you doing?
Good, man. How are you?
I'm doing good. I appreciate coming on. It's good chit-chatting with you for a little bit before we get started. But like I said, I think we better get started before we just burn all the good stories and stuff. So, in case somebody, especially defensive coaches, have been living under a rock, if they don't know you, how did you end up where you are now and kind of your career up to this point?
Well, I knew pretty early on that I wanted to be a football guy. My dad always tells me this story. When I was 11 years old and I was the quarterback of our Pop Warner team, he said one time the referee came over and says, "Coach, you got a coach on the field." And my dad was the coach. And he's looking around going, "What do you mean?" Like he thought maybe we had, we were breaking rules or something. He goes, "No, your quarterback. He's out there and he can tell every kid what they're supposed to do on every snap." And so, I mean, it one of those things, it just came natural to me. I could see things in my head for whatever reason. And, I just really enjoyed it. And I got to that point, and I think part of that too is I really enjoy listening to myself talk, and I really enjoy telling people what to do. So it worked out pretty good for me. But and so I knew early on, and I was a baseball, football guy, and went to college and played football and baseball in college also, and then got out and got my first job in Henrietta, Texas, and which was right outside of Wichita Falls. I played football at Midwestern State, and I was very blessed in my first job. I was hired as a junior high guy, and I was hired late, and got in there and started going through camp, and we got 2 or 3 weeks into school, and the head coach comes in and says, "Hey, make sure you're at the high school this afternoon at this time." And I was like, "Well, coach, we have junior high practice." He goes, "You don't. You're the new varsity defensive backs coach." And so, I mean, it was just one of those things that came natural to me, and I could go out and do it. And, very lucky, like I said, in that situation. The guy that was our head coach, his son was currently playing at the University of Oklahoma. The guy that was our defensive coordinator was a big time high school coach in the state of Oklahoma, won a couple of state championships at some high schools. And he was actually a graduate assistant for Barry Switzer in 1985 when they won the national title at the University of Oklahoma. So they had some ties, and they knew I wanted to be a college coach. And so they said, "Hey, there's a spot open if you want to go up there." And really it was a glorified video assistant basically situation. And got on, was able to go up there in the spring of 98, and I was going to go work for Bill Young, and Coach Blake had fired both of his coordinators, and Rex Ryan walks through the door. And so now I'm basically working for that guy. And there's a guy named Chuck Langston, who's the head coach down at Beaumont Westbrook. He was the D-line coach. He had just got done playing at OU, and he helped me a lot with that situation too. And anyway, I spent the spring there, learning as much as I could. I was very short tenured there. My wife and I had been married, and we just had a baby, and I needed to go find a job, make some money. So the funny part about that is I got my first coordinator's job as I left there. And the guy that I went to work for in Perry, Oklahoma, which is just outside of Stillwater. And at the time, Rob was the DC at Oklahoma State. So I kind of just transitioned from Rex to Rob in that situation. And the guy that was the head coach there, he was Rex's godfather to his son. And so anyway, it was just a bunch of coincidences everywhere. And so anyway, left there and came back to Texas, got my first college coaching job at Cisco Junior College in 2000. The guy that was our D-line coach, Chuck Langston, he becomes the head coach at Trinity Valley. We're in the same conference, so we're playing each other. One of Rex's roommates when Rex was in college was Jeff Weeks, and Jeff Weeks was the defensive coordinator for Chuck at Trinity Valley. So we're all playing each other, basically running all the same stuff, but just talking with those guys and learning more and more. And I just kept studying it, kept running it, figured out what I liked and what we could do, and kind of just stuck with it ever since. Coached at some D2 colleges, went up and got a job at Abilene Christian University, and then turned that into the head coaching job at Tabor College. And we go, and I say we, and my wife and I get invited to speak at the clinic at the Glazier Clinic in Kansas. And we go, and I mean, it's packed. I mean, I'm kind of shocked. I walk in and there's no seating available. My wife walks in and I'm like, holy cow. And the guy actually stops us at the door and says, there's no room available for you to come in. And I said, man, I'm speaking. And he was like, oh, okay, come on down. And so then they have to bring a chair in for my wife. And it was crazy. And we get done, and the guy comes in and says, man, y'all got to leave. And because the next speaker is supposed to, nobody had left, and they're following me out. My wife and I are supposed to have dinner at 7:00 or something like that. And we end up eating at 8:30 because we're out in the lobby, and so we're sitting at dinner, and my wife goes, you might be able to do something with this. And I was like, well, maybe. But anyway, I got done late 2008 or 9, if I remember right. And just got to that point. My kids were young, and I decided to get out of coaching in college, and took a high school job. And so I could be with my kids. They were at that age I wanted to spend time with them. Got out of coaching for about 5 years. And I was coaching my son's baseball team, started playing a lot of golf. My daughter started playing golf. My son had never in all my years shown any interest about playing football. And so he pops up in the summer of his 6th grade year and goes, hey, Dad, I'm going to play football next year. And I'm like, what? You've never even told me you were interested in that. He goes, well, I want to play. And I said, okay. So and he does pretty good his first year. And his second year, he plays in 8th grade, and he ends up starting in Mike linebacker. And I'm like, okay. So I said, hey, are you going to keep playing? And he said, yeah. And I said, well, then I'm going to go get a job. And so I got a coaching job at a small high school, and they let me be defensive coordinator and head golf coach, and got to be my daughter's golf coach. She qualified to go to state her junior and senior year. And I get to be her coach, walking the fairways at the state tournament, so I felt really blessed that I was given that opportunity. And then kind of kept moving up, and we went to a bigger school a couple of years down the road, and went over I was at McKinney High School about 3 years ago as a linebackers coach. And my buddy was the DC there, and they had a really good team. They did a really good job. And then we wanted to get back to the Fort Worth, Weatherford area. All of our family was here. We got a great opportunity. My wife's a teacher, and she got a great opportunity. And so we decided to come over here, and, got promoted. I came over as just a linebackers coach, and I got promoted to DC after my first year, and kind of been doing this. And we've kind of transitioned. We started transitioning after about game 5 last year. We got out of, and one of the things, and you're gonna ask me about this later. One of the things that's different about Buddy's defense and the 46 defense were the coverages, and everything was match man, and everything ended up for the most part as 2-man. That's how we were running it for the most part since 1998, and we had to kind of get out of that. And because we're in our district, we see an athletic quarterback every week. And we just had to be in a position where we could keep our eyes on the quarterback and drop and do things. And so we kind of transitioned out of that and got into more, I'd been a 4-down guy forever, started messing with 3-down stuff. About 2019, I had a hybrid type kid that I liked, and we started messing with some, I wouldn't say 3-3, I would say more kind of 3 safety cyclone stuff. In 2019, and then we started messing with it again about game 6 of last season, and now we're predominantly, that's all we're doing, and I really like it. It fits in well with what we were already doing, so it was an easy metamorphosis, if you will, into what we're doing now. But that's in a nutshell. Hopefully that gives you an idea.
That was perfect. And before we get into the kind of evolution you've dealt with and kind of the why, because and I talked to you about this beforehand, I think people like me understand that the difference between a 46 and what people will just say, oh, getting a bear front. And I don't think like some younger coaches or some people who don't really study defensive history and evolution really understand. For you, when you hear the word bear versus 46, what naturally goes through your mind? Or
that if I said that in front of Rex Ryan, I'd probably get smacked. So you're not allowed to say bear in front. As a matter of fact, if you look at any of his playbooks, bear was a 5-man pressure crossing the linebackers, I believe, when he was with the Jets. For us, the way I learned it was 46 with a Jayhawk adjustment. When they nickeled and they wanted to go 5-1, I believe Rob called it ace. I don't remember exactly what Rex called it. We call it cub because we had hawk and cub, and that's like I started trying to do away with terminology as we started getting different formations. It was built as a 21 personnel defense, and so then we started seeing 20, and then we started seeing 10, and we were still trying to do all these things. And originally you would nickel out and you would do all these things. And even if you go back and study what Rex has done through all of his years, he's changed a bunch. Just from when he went, from Cincinnati University to OU, he changed all his terminology for his coverages. He went to colored coverages when he got to OU, and that's what I learned, and that's what I've been running ever since. But when he was at University of Cincinnati, that's not really what he called it. And so he's changed his terminology a lot too. So I think there's been some disruption in the constant terminology. I feel like Rob really kept the terminology of his dad a little longer than Rex did. Just from the people that I talked to when he was at Oklahoma State, over front was over front, under was under, even was even. The 46 was the 46, but some other things. I mean, the load coverage, what we call 3Z, loaded zone. Rex ran a little bit different than Rob did on the backside, and so they both have kind of their own thing. But I learned the stuff that I learned, I've kept for the most part as far as terminology. We have tried to cut down on it. Like we stopped calling 46, we stopped calling Jayhawk, we just called Hawk. And our kids, our strong safety knew he was going to line up outside of number 2, and if number 2 was flexed out, I was out of the box. But if number 2 was the tight end, then I was in that 9. And so that was, we didn't want to call Jayhawk, and we didn't want to move the backers. And when Rex got to OU, he left the will in the game, and so the will stayed, the week 40, and because he was moving back and forth from over to the 46 front. And so we almost became not a field defense. It later on down the road, I went to a straight field defense, but his adjustments, he was just the strong safety was going to go the call side, the will was going to go the weak side, and they were going to adjust that way where, Rex was taking the will backer and putting him to the strong side. And I spent time with Mike Singletary, and he was telling me sometimes I would be the strong 40, sometimes I'd be the weak 40. and so all that changed. And so, it's all evolved somewhat ever, since, I mean, golly, you got to think back to 1982. You can go back and watch. I think I was watching, don't quote me on this. I may be way off base, but I think it was 82, and the Chargers are playing the Bears, and the Bears they're just now coming around, really, building this thing. And I'm seeing stuff and I'm going, man, we're still running that, 40 years later. And so it's just, called something different. So, but that's kind of where I went. And I hear, every office I've ever been in, 303 was a bear front. And I never say that. And even here, it drives me crazy because I won't say it. I'll say 303 or 404, because it's different. And so, anyway, that's kind of it. And people want to argue with me about it. I'm like, that's fine. I mean, everybody thinks differently. I'll have people say you can't run the 46 to 20 personnel. Well, yeah, I mean, the way that if you know how to adjust to it, the way that Buddy did, yeah, you can. And so, but anyway, I mean, it never bothers me. I understand, and I try to do my best to keep up with current terminology. I do wish that there was a universal, and I like old school. I mean, corner force is cloud and safety force is sky. We're using that now, but like we got young coaches, and I would say they'd be like, "What does that mean?" And so, but it is what it is. I mean, I've been in this thing so long that I try to, like I said, I try to keep up with all the terminology, but I don't always know it all.
Well, I mean, that is the one negative of our field is there's so many trees that
Yeah.
they have the same stuff, but the terminology is the verbiage is just so different.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you could teach the exact same thing and do the exact same thing, and the terminology could be completely. But that is what that is, just because of the various trees. I do want to ask you, like, this is kind of a two-part question: is why do you think, for the most part, at least parts of it, if not all of it, depending on who runs it, it's lasted so long? And then, kind of the piggyback off that, why is the 46 kind of your home base? Why didn't you go to a 3-4 or whatever as times evolved and all that?
Well, I was explaining this to when I grew up playing football. I mean, I graduated in 1988 from high school, and so and I was at Abilene Cooper, so I played against Midland Legacy. That they were dominant, and Odessa Permian was dominant, and it used to be we wanted to put as many guys at the line of scrimmage as we could to stop the run, and then it was, well, maybe if we only had 4 guys at the line of scrimmage and had 3 backers flowing. And now it's more like, well, maybe if we only had 3 guys at the line of scrimmage and 3 guys flowing. I always stuck with it because I always felt like it was an easy answer to teams that ran a tight end. I'm not worried about, am I going to have to put an outside linebacker down there? Then I've got to teach them how to play that 9 technique. Is that going to screw with my coverages? All those things. And that's one of the things and so to answer part of that question, I'm sitting in there. Rex gives me Buddy's Arizona Cardinals playbook, and I'm going through it. And I'm just like, man, these college kids, they'll never learn all this stuff. And eventually I start realizing how it's all pieced together. And I was like, well, shoot. And basically what it was, man, you guys are going to go over here and run this concept. And you guys are going to go over here and run this concept. And then you 5 guys are going to be responsible in here. And you can take these 5 guys, which for us was the end tackle, nose, Jack, and Mike. You can line them up any way you want. You can line them up in in 5 down. You can line them up in a 4-1. You can line them up in a 3-2. You do what you want to do, and but nothing changed for these guys over here or these guys over here, but it's a totally different look. And so as I started seeing how it all pieced together, I was just like, holy cow, man, this is pretty good. And as I left there and started teaching it, I was like, this is relatively easy to teach. especially when it came to techniques and reads and things like that, nothing really changed. The only thing that ever really changed was just where you lined up. Your responsibilities were still the same. Your techniques were still the same. Even as we went to the 3-3, I loved how we could, I'm taking a 5 technique and I'm scooting him back to play a stack backer. Well, he's still a spiller like he was at a 5 technique, he's got, maybe we use him in pass, but for the most part, he's still chasing the ball carrier like he doesn't. So I liked it, and it gave us an extra guy, and so just things like that. I felt like I really liked how that all worked together, and I guess I just, within about a year or two, I'd spent enough time with it that I could just whip it off on the top of my head and just knew it. And so, and I felt like it stood the test of time too. When zone read comes along, in the early 2000s, and we're in our over front and we're chasing with the 5, and we got the will linebacker just sitting out there in an invert waiting on the quarterback. If he pulls it, I'm just like, everybody's having problems with this. Why? We're lined up. It's ready to stop it, So I just felt like it stood the test of time with anything that came along, even now. And so it's just one of those things. I feel like it was easy. You could put in as much as you wanted or as little as you wanted, and you were still going to be in good shape. And just the way it all worked together, I really like that, because I'm just a big believer in, I want everything. I don't want to sit there and go, hey, now in this you got to do this, but in this you got to do this, and in this you got to do this. I just, for high school kids, I just didn't feel like that was going to be beneficial for us.
I get you on that. But you talked about evolving, and too, and this is one of the things I want to hit on, because, like I said, I'm actually rereading I believe it's your first book, The Modern 46, for the second time right now. I read it. I don't remember when I read it the first time, but I've been rereading that lately. And like I said, I know you've come out 2 other books there, and you've obviously mentioned, because you're a lot more forefront in there as kind of your quote unquote home base.
Yeah.
And you've kind of gone to that 3-3 as your kind of home base. Why has that kind of been your evolution? Is it just because you've had some of those more hybrid kids? Is it because of the offenses you see? What kind of made that transition for you?
I think the biggest thing was probably lack of finding quality D linemen being the biggest thing. When most places, I could easily go in and we structured out of a 4-2, with 2 overhangs. That's kind of where we started everything. And then, obviously we would get into our 46 front stuff, and all the rules stayed intact. So it stayed pretty easy. But especially when it came to coverages, I loved how the coverage, you never really had to, you could go, 8-man front was an 8-man front. And so you didn't have to change all your coverages and things like that. But I think in this day and age, the way that we've gone to it was a philosophical change with what we did with strength and conditioning and offseason. We've spent the last 4 or 5 months, and we really put an emphasis on team speed. And so we went out and we bought the lasers, and we're tracking mile per hour, and we're working on speed 2 days a week. And it's paid off. We're probably, since I would say January, as a team, up probably 1.5 miles, 1.75 miles per hour, because it's something that we put an emphasis on. And so I think we've gotten to where we know we're not going to have 6'4", if I got a guy that's 250 pounds that I think can play, I'm ecstatic. We're going to be 225 or less across the board up front. So again, some of it was out of necessity, just from, the type of kids we have. But at the same time, I did like the way that it fit in and how we can do different things, and give ourselves an opportunity to be better. We got a couple kids at linebacker that are really good players that can run. And so we we just felt like it was a good opportunity for us to be able to use our guys on the edges and loop and stunt and fill inside gaps and allow our Mike Backer to run some. We think he's going to be pretty good at that. And so just really it was almost a personnel out of personnel, necessity, because we're just not going to be able to compete. I mean, we're playing, we played the number 3 team in the nation last year. They won our district and won the state championship. They got 22 guys going Division I, and we got nobody. And so I would say out of necessity, and then at the same time, again, I like the ability that it gives us to do different things and give different looks and how it all ties together. And so, I really believe it's going to be a good move for us and be able to do those things. And again, I go back to the quarterbacks that we see. We're seeing athletic quarterbacks. And I mean, if their first read's not there, they're basically tucking it and running. And so, again, we've gone to zone coverages, spot drop zone coverages, and I really feel like that's going to help too.
Now, I want to ask, and this might be kind of a preview for anyone who buys your book. When you're, I'll start with this. So when you're in a stack, are you in 404? Are you 505?
Well, we're 505, depending on, we're going to stunt and slant and do all those things. We're trying to play a really heavy 5. Basically, what we're telling that guys is if you get down block, we want to trail the down block and spill. But if you get anything else, you're B gap. And so that's pretty much, I mean, it's in the book. We call it a B gap 5 technique. We're stepping at the guard. We're going to line up really heavy outside of the tackle. We're stepping at the guard. Basically, the guard is our read, and if that tackle beats us inside, that's fine. We can play trail and spill. But if he's bases us or he's out or whatever, we're a B gap defender.
Now, so when you go from there to the 46, who moves down? Like, who is your natural? Because again,
so
I've drawn up some stuff for me, and I'm just like, okay, I could, depending on where I put personnel, I could go either or. But how do you go from?
So we've got our Sam is our strong side stack. Our Mike is our middle, and our Jack is our weak stack. And so we flip field and boundary. Our field end is the end, and then obviously our nose is the nose, and then our boundary 5 is the tackle. And the reason we kept that was because we will still go 4 down, and we already had names for all of our loop stunts, and we didn't want to have to come up with any new stuff. They already knew all that. So if we go to a 303 front, like if we call Cub, then they're just going to reduce the end and the tackle are going to reduce to 3s, and the Sam and the Jack are going to walk down. And so we'll be in a 5-1 look. And then we'll tag that. If we wanted to go 5-2, we'll tag that with Hawk and get a safety down in there to go 5-2.
Okay.
And that'll be our short yardage goal line.
And you mentioned zone coverage there, like, again, kind of, that was my other follow-up question is, like, obviously you mentioned that for the Ryans initially it was all man match coverages.
Mm-hmm.
Even when you watch, I mean, Rex back with the Jets or the Bills, I mean, he's still in a crap ton of man variations at cover one. There's no secret about that.
Yeah.
So for you, like, again, I'm rereading the modern 46 right now, and again, you're mentioning a lot of those variations as well. I mean, obviously the offenses have kind of dictated it to a point, but like, what coverages have you start? Is it spot drop 3, spot drop 2? What direction did you kind of go with it naturally?
We went all 3. I mean, we're going to play quarters. We're going to play Tampa 2. And we're going to play chalkboard cover 3. Now we will play if we get 3-by-1, we will go to kind of a load coverage just because I'm I've always ran that. It's an easy change up for the kids. Again, all it really does is just change their spot where they're dropping. But from a rule standpoint, they know how to line up already based on our rules, and it's really not that hard for them. And so those will be our main ones. And then, like we have our 3 deep zone where we're sending the free safety to the middle field, and then we have a word that means the same thing, but it's a fire zone, right? So it's, if we call our cover 3, that's that 4 under 3 deep, and if we call the fire zone, then it's 3 under 3 deep. And so we see one of the reasons we felt like this would be a great change for us. We see 20 personnel or H-back 49% of the time. And so we're going to see power and counter, and we're going to see what I call H lead or H insert. And so, that's the run plays we see. There's some split zone sprinkled in there, but for the most part, it's gap scheme stuff out of H. And so we played one team that was strictly 10 personnel the whole game. But for the most part, I bet 8 of our 10 games are H-back oriented. So, we can zone out, we can play quarters if we want to, we can pack the box and, do things like that. And then if we want to roll cover 3, or we can spin cover 3 the other way, we're going to be split safety. So we're going to be like more 3-3-5-ish split safeties. And where, old school, we were always trying to show one high. We try to show one high to everything. And then we would we would probably only play one high 20-25% of the time, and we would always rotate to some kind of cover 2, inverted halves or something to that effect. So that's kind of been a bit of a change, but I felt like that, again, it was just a necessity. We needed to do it.
Okay. Now, I mean, one of the last couple of things I want to hit on before we go, and this is where I'll kind of plug, and you can plug however you want, but like, obviously if coaches want to know more, I mean, you got 3 books, you have a website.
Yep.
I kind of mentioned to you already. I mean, if you get on the Real 46X Twitter, whatever you want to call it, I mean, you're always posting great stuff on there, from drills to various films and clips. And I think that's a gigantic, great resource real quick. But like, I do want to give you a chance to talk about a couple of those things, like, because obviously you're very active on social media, and again, the website and the books, like, kind of why, and kind of what can people expect from those various outlets?
I mean, on Twitter, always just trying to, again, I go back to, man, I was very blessed early on in my career to learn from some really great coaches, and they helped me. And it was never you're just a pup, you just need to listen. If I wanted to walk in and ask questions, they would sit there, and I just felt like I'm trying to return that favor. And X gives us a platform to do that. And I probably need to post more than I do, but I see something and somebody's talking about something, and I'm like, hey, this might be a good drill to help you do that, or this is how we're doing this. If you can take that. And one of the things I'm probably going to do this summer is we've gone strictly to rugby tackling, and again, out of necessity, just because of the size of some of our players, we can't go into some of these guys, these big running backs we see with some of the players we have. And so we've gone to strictly, basically, lower body rugby tackling. And one of the things that we've been stressing is what I call strike foot. And because we kind of started progressing to it last season, and we were diving a lot, and we wanted to get out of the dive. And so we started stressing strike foot. And so we came up with a progression of how we're going to make sure the kids understand what we're doing. And I'm probably going to, when we get into June and we start doing our tackling drills, I'm going to film that progression and put it out there. So if somebody's interested in that, they can just look at that and go, okay, this is what they did on day 1. This is what they did on day 2. This is what, and so little things like that. And so to get the whole synopsis, I mean, obviously we've got 3 books out now. And then if you want to get video on anything that's in any of the books, we have that through our movie set. And so Everything's included now. You get the 3 books, you get all the videos that come with it. You get there's practice drills that are on the movie set. There's game film that's on the movie set. And so it's just all one bundle now. And I just said, look, it's just one of those things. If it's a way that I can give back to the football community, then that's what I want to do. And so as we do more, we put more stuff in there. And so and I'm not gonna change the price. And so again, we just put it all together, and if people are interested in getting it, they can go onto the website and grab it, and or they can buy books on there. They can buy books through Amazon, or man, just send me a message on Twitter. I don't mind people asking me questions. There are 2 or 3 things that I keep in my back pocket on defending some things, just because I don't want it to get out, because I've had success with it. And so if I ever come across having to play a team like that again, I really don't want that out there, because they may find out what we're doing. But for the most part, I mean, I'm pretty open to just sharing anything. And, I get, like I said, one of the main coverages for Buddy and Rex was what we call swipe coverage. And it's an inverted half type thing. And I've been running it for a long time, and people have questions about it all the time. One of the reasons we kind of got out of it was, that thing was built for the vertical passing game of the 80s. And as teams started getting into condensed sets and mesh and shallows and all those things came about, for high school kids, it kind of gets tough on them. And so again, I'm sitting there this spring, and our offense is like that. Our offense is mesh and condensed sets and stacks and all those things. And as we started running, more zone, I felt like it was just easier for the kids to pick up. We didn't have to spend as much time on it. And so it just, again, an evolution. And, if you look at Rob's playbooks, I think he still has a lot of swipe stuff in his, along with all his zone stuff. I don't know that Rex, even in his Jets playbook, had much swipe coverage stuff in his Jets playbook. He had pretty much gone to zone too, for that reason. I mean, you were just seeing the progression of the passing game because of guys like Hal Mummy and those guys that were running mesh and condensed sets and shallows and options and all those things. It was just, man, it might be easier for us just to zone off and break on the ball. And that's exactly what we're doing. I mean, for our underneath droppers, that's exactly what we tell them. Hit your spot, and when the ball comes out, go get it, And while that sounds a lot easier to teach, we still have guys chasing people. So we're trying to break that habit. But I tell my guys all the time, I said, that's just a testament to how good you coached those guys last year, man. They're thinking they're manned up on somebody, but we got to break that habit. We're getting there for sure.
Good. Now, what the last question I want to ask you is, and I like asking coaches this, especially see how everybody doesn't like from a defensive perspective. What does like y'all's pregame look like? Like, I'm always interested on how people think things, because let's just be honest, none of us are ever happy with our pregame 99% of the time. There's always
That's a good question.
There's always somebody that we don't like, or we watch.
And it's different everywhere you go, because head coaches are different with how they do pregame.
Yep.
I would like to, if we can, and we started doing it at the end of this year, and so it was good. We would go through our normal 5 minutes of Indy, get the guys loose, then we would come together and do pursuit, on down in the end zone, and the offense was running their plays. And then we would come down and we would line up, and we would tell our guys, hey, let's work I just want you to get in this front, take a step or two, let the offense run their play, get in man coverage, press, and then, hip flip or whatever it is based on the receiver's release, and then let him go, and he's going to run down, and they're going to throw, we would have 5 quarterbacks going at that time, and a lot of balls being thrown, but we would never go compete for the ball. We were just working footwork and our press and things of that nature, and let them go. And so we kind of just, it had gotten a couple times, a couple places I've been, we would go through Indy, and then the offensive guys would just take up the whole field running plays, so we didn't do anything. We sat there and watched. But I like the way we're doing it now, where we're running out, we're getting our pursuit in, then we're coming down, we're lining up, we're making our calls. Everybody's doing what they're supposed to be doing, and then when they snap the ball, we take 1 or 2 steps and we stop. And I think it keeps us fresh. It gets us ready, where from a game plan perspective, we may be doing something to this formation, or I want you to run this blitz or this slant or whatever, and they do it right there in pregame, and so it starts getting their mind right and getting geared up to play. But I felt like that's probably been the best one I've been around. My first college job, man, we scrimmaged. It was we scrimmaged. Of course, we had 120 players, and so we would get out there, and I mean it was dang near full boat in pregame for about 10 minutes, and that's just what he believed. He said, "Man, they're about to start running into each other. Let's get them ready to do that." Okay, and so it was pretty much live except the quarterback, but. Every head coach has a different idea how they want to do it. So, for me, I liked what we were doing at the end of this year, because we were staying active. We weren't just standing around looking around.
Perfect. Well, coaches, one, give him a follow, his ex, a follow, both of them, and both will be in the bio, both the 46 and his personal. Check out his website, which will be in the bio. Check out the books. The links for that will also be in the bio. Like, share, subscribe, all that jazz. Check out our sponsor, Coachpad. Otherwise, that's another episode of the Gap Down Backer podcast.